Hello and welcome to Humans of Fuzia. I'm Riya Sinha, your host, and today we have the pleasure of welcoming Ruchika Kumar. She is Associate General Counsel at Genentech, a biotechnology company. Welcome.
Thank you. I'm so excited about this opportunity.
Okay, great. So we can just get into the questions now. My first question that I had was for you to briefly introduce yourself and what work are you doing now and what led you to that? What was your journey?
I'm so many things. I feel like we have so many labels. I'm a lawyer, a trusted advisor to the business. I'm a wife, I'm a mother, I'm a daughter, I'm a daughter-in-law, I'm a sister, and I'm an immigrant. So I feel there's lots of labels, but at the end of the day, it's kind of me, and I think all of us are so unique. And I really do believe that it's our experiences, our culture, our education, so many things that make us. So the question introduce yourself, I always find hard. But if I were to go on just introducing myself as to what I do, as you said, I'm an Associate General Counsel at Genentech. I've been there close to almost 16 years, so it's been a long time. I come from a family of lawyers. So at Genentech, they would say, oh, law is in my DNA. So really law does define me a lot. And being a lawyer defines me a lot as an individual.
Mm-hmm. And also what kind of led you into the passion of being a lawyer? Was it your family or what else?
So I grew up in India, and I do have a family of lawyers. My grandfather was a lawyer. My uncles are lawyers. I have cousins who are lawyers. Even on my mother's side, I have judges and lawyers. So I did see a lot of law around me and a lot of discussions around law. And also, I've always had this desire to change society and do something, and I felt like law is a very good way to do that. Am I doing it right now? Not really, Riya. I wish I was doing more in that area, but I think life just took me in a path where I ended up in the corporate world. Though in my small way, I do keep trying to make some differences as a lawyer. So that's, and also in India, growing up in India, we had the typical kind of careers open to us. Architect, engineer, doctor, lawyer. So in some ways I did follow a very traditional kind of a profession, but the kind of stuff I did in India and the kind of courses I took in my graduate school, I was hoping that I was expanding my mind beyond, being this lawyer who's making a ton of money. So at some point in my life, I hope to give back. I'm finding avenues to give back. So let's see what ends up happening.
Yeah, I think like you said, I think it's also in the little ways. I think the work that you do every day, I'm sure also must have an impact on the company and the employees. So I think it's all...
You're right. At Genentech, our mission has been putting patient at the center of the conversation. And it's always been looking for the unmet medical needs. So we've as a company believed in that, not going after the big blockbuster drugs or going where the market is big. It's really trying to put the patient at the center. So I think that mission really resonated with me, and that's why I've been around for 16 years.
Yeah, and I think definitely now that's more important than ever with the pandemic and everything that's been going on. My next question, I guess, it is very similar to what we've been talking about, but it's also and I think you've already touched on this a lot, but how did your culture, the way you grew up, influence the work you do now, or the values that you have now?
Yeah, you yourself are from a South Asian family, so I don't know if it's changed for you because your parents are here, but growing up for us, education was everything. Yeah. It was, you had to stand on your own feet. I come from a service family, so it's not like, they had a business that they could pass it on to me. So it was education, and it was always that education is something that nobody can take away from you. Yeah. It'll always be there. And I don't mean education when I just mean bookish knowledge, right? That you've read, you've kind of gone through the degrees. I think education was also expanding your mind. So the kind of exposures and experiences my parents gave me, I'm so thankful to them now, Riya, now that I have my own children. I realized that I know so much or have awareness and exposure to so many things because we were exposed to things as kids. So I try to do the same stuff, and it's not that I grew up in this kind of super affluent. Yes, we were upper middle class, but we weren't affluent that we could, at the drop of a hat, buy this, go out there. So we also learned to make the best of what we had, and not play victim all the time, but also kind of see the position of privilege that we had and what we could do from there. So So I think that's somewhere, and I give this example. I came in my early 20s to do my graduate school here at in the US. I wasn't married at that time. Some people in India said, "Oh my God, you're sending your young daughter to the United States. She's going to come all spoiled and everything." But because my parents had trust in me, and I was so conscious that I didn't want to break their trust, I was making sure I was not kind of going away from the path of following the values and the things that I've been brought up on.
Yeah, exactly. Speaking of the values, I wanted to also ask, like, what are things that you are passionate about now? I mean, they can be anything, whether it be work related or just life related in general. Like, what are maybe 3 things that you're the most passionate about?
Sure. Social justice is huge for me, and I don't mean social justice just as a lawyer. So it's not about just the stuff that we can do through judicial action. I also mean, social justice as being very curious and questioning why certain things are being done a certain way, not just following traditions, following rituals. Even something small, like there's an Indian festival in which you pray for the long life of your husband. I've been having so many issues with that festival. I want that festival to continue, but it's a beautiful festival, apart from what the basic fundamental misogyny that it's set in the picture. So I have been questioning it, and I've said that let's talk about it, let's revisit it, and let's make it kind of relevant for today. Don't kill the festival, but let's change the narrative around the festival. So even small things like that, it's really taking the time to understand why we're doing certain things, and saying that what makes sense now and what's kind of old-fashioned, and it's put people into silos or into stereotypes. So even this whole Black Lives Matters happened this summer. There's so many things I didn't understand, so I took the time to read and understand as to why is there such a history of oppression and suppression of this community. And coming as immigrants, I didn't feel it as much, but then I realized that there's this whole concept of model minority, which I wasn't familiar with. So just taking the time to understand, and then once you understand it, then starting to make changes, first within yourself, then in the small sphere of influence that you have on your children and your spouse, and then kind of expanding it out. So that's my whole social justice. The second thing I'm very passionate about is female empowerment. And that also I have, you can imagine, as a lawyer, I have opinions on everything.
Yeah.
So on female empowerment, I feel very strongly it's not just about gender equality. It is about giving women the choice and the options, and then letting the woman make a decision what she wants to make. And the decision could very well be something that you and I as empowered women might say, oh my God, why is she doing that? But if that's a choice she wants to make, she should have the right to make that choice. So that's for me a very important aspect, and I try to do. I have 2 daughters, so we constantly have these discussions. I'm trying to grow some very powerful girls. And then the third is dancing. I just love to dance. And I don't mean any kind of very serious form of dance, but more just dancing at parties and finding opportunities to put on loud music and dance.
No, I think we definitely need that also. It's a great form of exercise.
Yes.
To just dance it out. And I wanted to say I really agree with the other points that you've made as well. Even with the Indian festival, I used to argue all the time, or not argue, but I guess discuss, like, why is only the woman fasting and praying for the husband? Like, why is it both? Like, so I really agree with a lot of what you're saying about, giving women the choices to do what they want. And then, like, if they choose a certain thing that I wouldn't agree with, still they have the choice to do it. And I think that's the more powerful part. And like not judging other people for the way that they choose to live their lives, which is really important. I think it's also not that spoken of in like media and like society right now. So
yeah,
I think that's really powerful.
Yesterday I was just having this discussion. I don't know if you've seen there's a new show on Netflix that talks about marriages in India, the wedding, the event.
Oh, the big day.
The big day, right?
Yeah, I watched it.
You did? And so in one of them, this girl is obsessed with her wedding. So my daughter and I were having the conversation, and my daughter's point, which I agree with, was that if somebody thinks wedding day is all important for them, I might not agree, my daughter might not agree that a woman's entire life is been waiting for this wedding day. But for one woman, it is important, right? She wants her wedding day to be really beautiful and she wants to put in a lot of time. I think we shouldn't judge her for that too. Yeah. And that for me was important because we as women also judge other women all the time. So we also have to expand ourselves to say everybody doesn't have to be this feminist in this very outwardly way, as long as you are kind of doing what you believe you want to do.
Yeah, I definitely agree. And I guess I wanted to expand. I know we've talked a lot about, this like women judging other women and like these types of issues, but I wanted to ask, like, also in the workplace, what are some of the challenges that you might have faced when you were trying to start out, and like maybe even now, like what are some challenges you face? It doesn't necessarily have to do with, like women or like facing judgment, but I just wanted to ask, like.
Yeah, no, that's a great question. And I've been very lucky that I lived in two cities where the immigrant experience is not unusual. So I was working in New York, and then I was working in San Francisco. I work in the Bay Area. So I'm very lucky where, we are seen as part of mostly we've seen as part of that whole demographic.
Yeah.
So I didn't face any immigrant or women of color kind of situations. I think what was harder for me was that I was getting into a profession which has been very white, and the legal profession is a white male kind of a profession, and I won't even make it a gender thing. My other thing was I have a JD from overseas, right? My JD is not American, even though my graduate school for law, I went to UPenn and I have a California bar and a New York bar. It still was a struggle to break into mainstream legal career, right? So that was a struggle. However, I got some lucky breaks for sure, but there were so many people who were my advocates, my mentors, and my sponsors who took a chance on me. And what I've realized and what I'll say to people is, when somebody takes a chance on you, you want to do even better, because one is you don't want to disappoint yourself, but then you don't want to disappoint that person, and you don't want them to regret that they took a chance on you. So because I kind of did that over the length of my career, it's been 20 years in the United States doing law. I have had lots of people who've advocated for me, and which really I could not have got to where I am without that kind of sponsorship.
So I definitely agree.
Yeah, that was initially very hard.
What did you do to, I guess, overcome it? You mentioned having the sponsors and the lucky breaks, but was there something else that you had to tell yourself, be confident, it doesn't matter what other people think, or what did you, I guess, do to overcome some of these challenges?
Yeah, so Riya, for that I have to say, sometimes you have to put your ego at the front door. I had a law degree from India. I was barred in India. As I said, I come from a family of lawyers who are very well-known lawyers in India. And then to come to the United States and kind of beg for a job. And to say, and then I had a degree from UPenn, I had a California bar, a New York bar, and you're still having to prove yourself. So for me, what I learned was that you have to be humble. You have to put your ego at the door, and sometimes you just have to do dint of hard work is how you get ahead. So in the initial years, I just had to learn and just do whatever came my way. And again, I tried to stay within the legal profession, but there were some steps I had to take down, which from a education and career point of view, at that time I felt like, oh my God, I'm a lawyer, but why am I doing this kind of work? But you just put your head down and you do it, and then people do see. If you're lucky enough to have people who care, they do see the kind of intellect you bring, or the kind of hard work and work ethic you bring to the job, and that's when you start developing those sponsors and mentors. But one step back is generally gets you 2 steps ahead. Generally, people say, right, 1 step ahead means 2 steps back. It's not. It's mostly you can get 2 steps ahead.
Speaking of this wonderful advice, do you have any messages or words of advice to some of the younger women watching this interview?
I always have advice. I'm a lawyer. That's what I do. So one of the things I've been thinking a lot about, and actually I've been writing a lot about it, is we talk about the abuse of power. So I almost talk about the other side of power, the unuse of power, where we are not using the power we have. So we all have voices, and you and I and a lot of people who will see this are coming from a place of privilege, right? They have, and power, I don't mean just, money or status. I mean power of education, power of the luck of birth, right? Which family you were born in, the power of being in a situation of understanding. And when we don't raise our voices around the oppression we see around us, even though the oppression is not happening to us, I think that I feel when you don't use that power, for me, that is the saddest part. Like, for example, um, uh, again, I'll take that example of that festival. You and I, not you, a lot of us in our community, our mother-in-laws are now sitting on our head, or not our husbands are saying, but we continue doing it because we say, oh, it's fine for us, we enjoy it. But if you don't change it, people who are looking at you as role models will think if they are doing it as a role model, then it must be okay. Even like raising your voice around the whole Me Too movement. I don't know if you were keeping track of it when it was happening in India. There were so many celebrities who could have raised their voice and said something and supported it. They didn't. Even when all this, the whole drama around the political scene was happening, so many people in the United States who had the power and the platform didn't use their power and platform. So my whole thing is, use your voice, use your power, pay forward your good fortune, which you are doing, Riya, which I'm very impressed with, and pave the way for the future.
Amazing. And speaking of the future, are there any future opportunities that you're looking forward to? Anything? What are you looking forward to in the future coming up for you, or for you, just the world?
Yeah, I mean, for me, I'm most excited. I've booked my tickets to India. I haven't seen my parents in 2 years. So I'm hoping to go in mid-March. So that's something I'm really looking forward to, and getting to the end of this pandemic so we can go back to things we took for granted.
Yes.
Future-wise, there's so much hope I have from the next generation. I mean, not to say we are still very relevant. Our generation still has a lot to do. It's not that I'm saying now it's you guys who have to figure it out. Absolutely not. I'm not abdicating our responsibility, but I think this generation, your generation, I have so much hope from you guys. I've been so impressed with the voices that you guys have and what you're standing up for. So that's my hope for the future. You guys are my hope for the future. Again, not saying that we are not going to do our bit. We are absolutely going to do our bit. But from a futuristic hope, you guys.
Okay. Thank you so much. This has been a really insightful and amazing conversation. Thank you so much for taking the time to be a part of it.